everybody, or afternoon, or nighttime, depending where you guys are. Welcome to Queers Live with Robert Garcia. And today I have a special guest with me. Their name is T. T, would you like to introduce yourself, your pronouns, and give us like where you're from?
Hi, I'm T. I am from Southern California. I use they, them pronouns. Yeah.
So to start off, how did where did you grew up in Southern California? Are you currently in Southern California or?
Oh, sorry. I'm
No, it's fine.
currently I'm currently in New York on Long Island, going to school, so studying
Oh,
and doing that stuff.
okay, that sounds really fancy and cool. Um, so how out are you? Are you somewhat out? Are you a little bit out? Or are you just like getting there? Like, tell us.
I'd like to say I'm completely out, but like there are still some people where I'm like gauging how accepting they'll be, especially gender wise, because
Mhm.
I'm non binary. But sexuality wise, I'm out to everybody I care about.
Okay, so in that case, what is your sexuality, if you don't mind us asking?
Yeah, so generally, I feel like the term queer is like closest to like how I feel, but like getting into the nitty gritty, I'd say I'm like gray, asexual, and like bi or pan romantic.
Mm. Okay, I personally heard of aromantic and asexual, but for our audience out there, can you like give a little bit like of a definition rundown for people that don't know in your own words? It doesn't have to be according to Google, just like how you feel it means to you.
Yeah. So to me, gray aromantic or gray asexual is I'm not completely asexual, but like I'm more closer to that than allosexual or like
This is like one of our juicy questions. Are you single or are you in a relationship?
it's complicated.
That is a big mood. Always, it's always complicated.
I am in a long distance, although unofficial relationship right now.
Okay. Well, as long as it brings you happiness, that's
Yeah,
what really
yeah,
matters. So, I hope you're happy in that relationship, even if it's complicated. I hope you're doing good.
yeah, yeah.
So, going back to the queer community, how did you discover the queer community? How were you exposed to it? Because,
Growing up, I was always told this story about one of the first times that my uncle met me, and I was tongue-tied.
mhm.
And one of the things that my parents say is, "Yeah, Jim said you would be a terrible lesbian just
Oh,
because I was tongue-tied."
uh-huh.
And like that's I guess that's one of my first exposures to the community. But like the community as a whole, probably getting into theater or getting into high school. I went to an arts high school, so like,
Okay.
it was a very open and like
Yeah.
one of the first years there we had like a bit of a pride festival kind of thing where
Mhm.
you could go around to different like tables and learn about pansexuality and non-binary identities and demi-girl versus demi-boy and all kinds of stuff. So yeah.
I would say that's like so cool just because my high school is brand new, so we didn't have anything like that. And it would like probably be more appreciative because during my senior year, it was our first GSA. So when we had our first GSA, that was the first time we like started educating people in the sense that, oh, the LGBT is just more than the LGBT. There's a plus for a reason because they're all these letters, all these histories, and like it's so cool to like know that you had a school that taught people that like the first Pride Week is like even if it's the first one or like the first big one, it was like really cool to know that. So I was going back. So would you say like your first interaction? So now we're like interacting with the community. Was your first interaction in high school or was it like when you went off into college?
Well, in high school, one of my first jobs kind of was at an LGBT theater. So being able to work there and like interact with, queer although they were a bit older than me, queer peers, more or less,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and really the emphasis on queer playwrights and queer characters really helped me feel more myself and come into my own a bit more. You know, back then I wasn't out as non-binary. So really, you know, one of the first shows I did there was Rent, which has like a very queer main cast, and Angel, who is, I believe, non-binary, trans in some way, you know, and really being able to like see that, you know, see an actor give life to that and be like, oh, this isn't like crazy shit. Like, this is, you know, it's not just me who's like, I don't quite, you know, like feeling like I don't quite fit with either binary gender, and I don't have to present either way.
No, I love that, because when you have that moment when you realize, like, wait, I'm not crazy, like, there's something to this, because other people are experiencing the same thing. I recently just found out yesterday, because my friend, she has someone in her family that loves like plays and stuff. So they love the show Rent. And I was like, is Rent, like, I thought it was like a Mary Poppins situation or something like that, where they like clean the gutters. But then my sister yesterday, she was telling me, she's like, Rent, I think it's like a queer cast. Like, it's like about queer people find their experiences. And I was just like, that's what it is? I honestly thought it was just like an apartment and like they're cleaning and they're talking about how sad they were and then they fight. But that's cool that that's what Rent is, and that like it gave me that little experience of like, okay, I'm not crazy. Like, there's something to it that is actually should be normalized. And like, that's why I love this purpose of this channel, to like, we're normalizing the stories, and that everybody has a different path. Some have like easier paths than others. Like, I believe it's like a luxury that you guys had like an arts program. My school didn't, because our school was so small, so we didn't have that. So
yeah. I'm really glad I got into that school, because it really let me, I had quite a rough, you know, childhood, and high school was very turbulent for me. So really having that, you know, art and theater being that like that thing I can hold on to. There were times where I was at school far more than I was at home for like months on end, just because it was safer, you know.
Going back to that safety, would you say that your coming out experience made you sometimes think you want to go back to the closet? Do you ever think that it was better being in the closet than out of the closet?
I don't think so. I don't think I've ever had an experience where I'm like, oh, that went bad, I regret it. You know, there's been numerous times where my memory sucks ass. So there's been numerous times where I've come out to friends and then come out to them again because I didn't remember that I came out to them the first time. There's one specific friend, her name's Chloe, and love her with all my life. There's been numerous times where I'm like, Chloe, I think I'm non-binary. Just like having like this like epiphany, and then like I go to sleep and I forget that I texted her that or whatever. And then, you know, 6 months, a year down the line, I'm like, I'm so sorry, but I need to get this off my chest. Chloe, I'm non-binary. And it's always hilarious to me when like I remember that I've already come out to her so many times. I'm like, I'm so sorry.
Were the friends, but were there any friends that like pushed back on your queer identity or made it seem like, I can't accept you, therefore you either need to go back to where you were, quote unquote, before, or they were no longer your friend? Or like, did it just like everybody, like, they're like, give me time, I'll accept it, but just give me time?
Yeah, I've had quite a few friends. Most of my friends I've met through theater, so there's just like this assumption of like, hey, I'm chill, you know. But there's one in particular who we've like been distant and then come back together and then been distant again. But I came out to her my freshman year of college as non-binary, and she was like, okay, I have a trans friend from back home. And when I came out to all of my friends, like my sophomore, junior year, like she was one of the people who was like worst at my pronouns, and I'm like, you've had so much time to get used to this stuff. So, but like in general, there's nobody that's really been all that shitty with my name or my pronouns. People forget, it's difficult for professors, but with friends, there's this kind of thing where I'm like, if you don't get it, you don't mean that much to me.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of bad, but I'm like, if you're not if you're not with me, you go away.
Yeah, I see that point where like sometimes you just don't want to not deal with it, but like if you're not going to put the effort into trying, then I'm not going to put the effort in like trying to keep you on. Like that's very understandable. And going with that, like, do you feel like sometimes within the queer community you feel like you don't fit in necessarily? Like you feel like it is my community, but at the same time I don't feel like I fit in?
Yeah, no, there's not that many times now, because I've really like come into my own, and I feel like I don't need that much outside validation. I'm a very anxious person. So like knowing that in myself I'm valid, and like knowing that my friends see me that way as well, and that like I can go to almost any of my friends and be like, hey, I just need you to like reassure me that like I'm not crazy. Like now I'm like really secure in it, but when I was first coming out, when I was first discovering things like asexuality on Tumblr in 2015 or whatever, I was really like, I don't see myself reflected in what I'm seeing in queer media. Will I be accepted once I fully come out? All this stuff, but not that much now. And I think it's a lot of it is just the community as a whole being more accepting. Yeah,
I see your point, and like fearful how at first you're like, will they be accepting of me, will they not? But slowly, like as you grew, the queer community also grew, and it was like becoming more diverse, because a lot of people don't see the queer community, they only see like one type of face. It has to be this, but like be like, no, there's like other aspects of our community that don't always show, but they always tend to shine when they need to. And like I find that so nice that like at first you didn't find your little niche, but then soon you found where to like not put yourself in, but where you fit in if you wanted to like feel like part of a community. And from there, like knowing that you're discovering like asexuality in 2015 through Tumblr, do you think in order to create change, you need to know your queer history, not yours personally, but like the history of like Stonewall, why Stonewall happened, how did we get to this point? Do you think that's valuable in creating change?
I think queer history is so valuable, and just such. I was in high school. I don't know if it's changed. I heard rumblings that it was going to when I was a senior in high school, that like California was going to teach queer history in like mainstream history classes. But really for me, discovering queer history, and like in college I took an intro to LGBT course, and really learning about so much of the history and how so much of it was either swept under the rug or gotten through blood, sweat, and tears. It's something that I think as a community we really need to, in order to forge forward, we really need to look back and see where we've come.
I feel like queer history, like currently right now, it's more like prevalent because it's like easily like shown. People create social media posts, but then there's some parts of queer history that people tend to forget. Like for example, I didn't know this until like about like 2 weeks ago, that the Stonewall Inn before it became like a place for like the queer community to hang out and like create the first Stonewall riots, it was owned by the mafia in New York, and that like the mafia would be like, yo, if you protect us, we'll protect you, we'll give you some like hookups and like all that. I'm just like, oh, that's so cool. Like I felt that's a really cool queer history that not a lot of people know about.
Yeah. Trying to think of something else, but yeah, you know, a lot of, especially on the East Coast, a lot of, you know, queer bars were really protected. Queer bars and queer places in general were protected by the mob because, like, you weren't allowed to be queer and dance with somebody of the same sex or even consume alcohol. Like, Stonewall didn't have a liquor license, which to me is kind of crazy. But, like, because, you know, the laws are so discriminatory and, like, there's so much there where I'm just like, why?
Yeah, exactly.
Why is this not taught, you know?
Are there like any particular queer topics you're interested in that like you specifically like, oh, I want to learn more about that, or like I'm learning more about that because it's interesting to me?
Yeah. So something I've been getting far more interested in is really the intersectionality of queerness and disability.
Okay.
I think the last stat I looked at said something like a third of the LGBT community had a disability, which to me is kind of astounding. But like looking at my friends, you know, I'm in the process of getting diagnosed with chronic illness. One of my other good friends who I've known since high school is also in that same process for that same illness. You know, one of my friends where we're like this, he has OCD and depression, and I think anxiety, something else, you know, really the intersection of how, I don't know how to put this, but like the intersections of disability and queerness and also inaccessibility within the queer community, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I think it's really interesting, and it's something where, you know, I'm really wanting to, you know, dig more when I have time, since I'm currently taking 18 credits worth of classes, and
thinking about disabilities and the intersection of the LGBT community, I really think that is important because I do watch this TikToker. I don't remember their name, but they have a disability and they have a chronic illness, and they also identify with the LGBT community. And what I like watching about her videos is that, like, it's not like, oh, I wonder how a disability person survives. It's more like, oh, I never knew you use like these technologies and they're like very inaccessible to you. And especially because you're the LGBT community, a lot of people just like don't realize sometimes, like, just because you're LGBT, you're not only LGBT, but you're also part of like different other communities, no matter if it's like the community that relates to disabilities, the Latinx community, the any type of community that people identify, like they intersect with each other, and a lot of people don't think about that. And would you say that does the queer community also influence your career path? Even if you don't have one, do you think like what you want to do in life has to be related to the queer community, or has your career path went one way, but because you identify within the queer community, you start turning towards jobs more fitting to the queer community?
Yeah, so I don't really think so, but I think starting out my theatrical career working at an LGBT theater has really shaped, you know, what I want to do. I really want to help highlight, you know, queer voices, whether that be on stage, in, you know, the writer, you know, in production, and now, you know, kind of, you know, diving a bit more into that intersection with disability, really highlighting and acknowledging how ableist theater is, you know, and how little representation there is for queer disabled folks. You know, there's, you know, YouTube is an amazing place. You know, off the top of my head, I can think of 3 or 4 queer creators that I like love to watch, who are also disabled. But podcasts are doing something pretty good with queer and disabled folks and really trying to hit that intersection. But mainstream media isn't, at least that I see. So yeah, really, I feel like a lot of what I've been interested in has been just pivoting. At the beginning, I'm like, I just want to do theater, whatever. I don't care what the thing is. I just want to do theater. And then growing and, spending time on Tumblr and realizing, ooh, quite a few things are problematic and kind of need to be reworked, and, really wanting to be there when change is happening is, something that has kind of reignited my drive through theater.
Okay. And would you say that your queer identity makes most of your identity, or only like a big part of it? Or like some people are like, my queer identity is everything, and other people are just like, no, my queer identity is a big part, but also this part of me is also very valuable and important.
Yeah. I would say when I was first coming out, it was, but really being in a friend group where basically everybody is queer or, an ally, it's more finding out what's unique about me beyond that, figuring out that I'm somewhere between abled and disabled, like in that gray area there, finding out my love of hand lettering and like kind of calligraphy, and how sometimes I'm stopped by doing that because I'm not entirely able, really going beyond just my sexuality and my pronouns, really finding out, okay, that's cool, let's figure out more about myself, and like really diving into that in my writing is something I've grown so much through.
See, like anything calligraphy or anything cursive, I'm extremely jealous, because like that's like some talent. Like you should be proud of that, because like having like skills of patience and just making sure the letters are perfect. Like I have a friend, his name is Luis. He does beautiful cursive writing, but like not the like bunched up together, the nice like spread out, you can understand it. Like it could be on art. And I just always love his cursive writing that I'm jealous about, because I can't write cursive or anything. I have legible handwriting, but I have barely like nice handwriting. And just like seeing people do, like, I'm always amazed when they do calligraphy or like cursive, because it's just like, oh my gosh, it's like talented. And then when I asked them, how did you learn that? Elementary. And I was like, my elementary teacher tried for like one day, and then they're like, you know what, these kids, they can't do it. I give up. Like it was just one day, and then like my opportunity. What would you tell your childhood self? So what would you tell little T that's barely discovering themselves, or that they haven't discovered themselves yet? What would you tell little T?
I would really tell them to be brave and stay strong, because there's, no matter who you are, there's a lot of shit that happens in life, like no matter what, you need that strength and you need to be brave. I'm really just reminding myself that I have that within me, I think would be really valuable for me growing up in the way that I did.
Okay. And growing up, have you ever met someone, or have you been personally discriminated or identified within the LGBTQ plus community? And like, what did you do about it? Like, were you shocked? Did you say something back? Did you just like felt scared? What did you do?
I wouldn't say I really have. One of my first jobs, in theater, I was, just coming out as non-binary, and like, so I was still like kind of like, I would really like they them pronouns, but like it's okay, and working with somebody else who, was further along in their journey of accepting themselves, and had more experience going, no, I use they them pronouns, you will use they them pronouns for me. was really valuable. But then again, I don't kind of view that as discrimination. It's just lack of education, really. But I did have a friend who I went to high school with. His name was Blaze Bernstein, and in 2018, he was the victim of a hate crime, which left him buried in a shallow grave in a park. So really figuring out, oh, this shit still happens. This stuff still happens to people I know and still happens where I live. You know, really being confronted with that and, you know, coming back to New York and no one hearing about it. You know, like my friends and I from our high school, we were really like, did you hear that this thing came out on the news about this? And, you know, really like it was kind of like a, I don't know how to put it, like a gut-wrenching experience, really, like realizing, oh, the world isn't as safe as I thought it was. You know, yeah, we have we have marriage equality, but this stuff, you know, at least when it happened, wasn't seen as a hate crime under California law. You know,
Very brave of you to share, because you didn't have to share that with us. But I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing that. Yeah, a lot of people don't think it can happen to you until it happens to you, and that's what I think should start like creating change in the sense that we shouldn't wait until something bad happens to us that we want change. We should want change because it's for the better of our community. Because a lot of people, there's this thing that me and my sister talked about, and how she said a lot of people, if they don't have it directly affecting their lives, they won't care about it. And I think people should stop thinking like that instead of being like, well, it's not directly affecting me, it's not directly affecting you yet, but eventually it could. And
I think that word is yet. You know, you never know what is going to really impact you and change your life in the future.
Yeah, exactly. And going from here, how would you describe the word discrimination? Like, what does discrimination mean to you?
It's a tough one, you know. It's really, I guess, the easiest way I could describe it really is, you know, being looked down upon or, you know, disadvantaged, I guess, by not being a cis straight white man who's also typically in America Christian and also abled. Like not being that pinnacle of society, you know, everything else, you know, race, gender, sexuality, you know, like disability, you know, whether that be, you know, depression or dyslexia or, you know, physically being disabled, you know, everything is a step down and leads to, you know, hatred, not because of you as a person, but because of something that you must stand for, you know?
Of course, like exactly everything you said, I agree. Like sometimes we don't realize our luxuries, because even though people say it's a privilege, they're more like luxuries that we don't really realize we have until like it's gone. And that basically acknowledging those luxuries are always important, because not only you're acknowledging that you have them, but you're also realizing other people don't have those same luxuries as you, and you could work on helping them to at least get some form of equality and equity within their everyday lives. And like to bring up this whole vibe and energy and bring it back up again, because we want to share like the good ups and downs of the community. What are some of your favorite things about the LGBT community? Like, is it the energy? Is it the accepting? Is it the caring? Is it the loving environment? What do you love about what is your favorite thing about the LGBT community?
I think it's just that, the word community. You know, no matter where you go, you know, you can find someone who understands at least a fraction of what you've gone through, you know? Like, coming out isn't an easy process. Like, even if you have super accepting friends and super accepting parents and live in a super accepting society, you're still scared. Because what if you haven't gauged them correctly? You know, what if you think everything is going to be, you know, all hunky-dory, and then you come out and they're like, what? Get out of here. You know, it's such a difficult thing, and there's at least that, you know, that, I guess, I'm trying to think of the word, but like that, like the bare bones, like everyone has felt that, you know. And then, you know, going further, if you're, say, you know, gay and you find another gay person, like, it's another layer of, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. Like, there's somebody else who feels the way I do. And even though I grew up in Southern California, you know, 2 hours from LA, you know, I knew that queer people existed, but really, like, feeling as though, okay, well, the town I live in is, or the county I live in is quite Republican. What does that mean? Does that mean I'm more likely to get hate crimed? Does that mean I'm less likely to be accepted? You know, all of these things, like finding a community that really, you know, accepts you, and especially a large community. You know, starting out working in an LGBT theater, you know, I was working there during June, you know, I was doing rent during Pride Month and during the month that marriage equality became legal, you know? Like, that was such a big thing. And really finding that community. And even though, you know, I was one of the only AFAB people in tech there, you know, not just on that show, but in general. And then, you know, being so much younger than my peers, you know, I was in high school when many of them had already graduated college. You know, really finding that difference and being accepted and loved, you know, with that difference was really, really powerful. Because, you know, it's just finding other people like you.
Totally. And of course, with every community, there's always their downs to the community. So is there anything about the LGBT community that you don't find favorable?
You know, really, you know, finding myself as an AFAB person, you know, coming out as queer, and then, you know, I think first I came out as bi, and then I was like, well, I'm kind of more ace, and then, you know, later being like, well, I don't feel feminine. I don't feel like, at the very least, I'm gender nonconforming. And then really coming to that non-binary identity and label, like the idea of, you know, queer or LGBT being straight white men, like that idea, you know, in media, and still kind of persists at Pride, you know, like that idea that that's the pinnacle of the community, when the community was built by, you know, non-white trans women, you know, like having that and just being like, why did we get here? Like, why is this the pinnacle of the community, where it's just a step away from the pinnacle of society, really? You know, that having that, like, I don't know how to put it, like that hierarchy kind of doesn't float my boat.
Does it like suck to have your interests and achievements constantly associated with your sexuality or gender identity? Like, for example, I know it's important to be like, yes, Harvey Milk is one of the first political figures to also identify as within the LGBT community. But does it suck to sometimes having your achievements sometimes overshine because of your sexuality or gender identity, or does it really happen to you?
I don't think it really happens to me because, you know, I'm majoring in theater. You know, there's an unspoken like kind of expectation that you're at least okay with queer folks in theater. Um, but a lot of my hobbies are still very individual things. I write poetry, I do hand lettering or calligraphy, I doodle, all of that stuff. Like, yeah, okay, you can look at my poetry from a LGBT perspective, because I talk about things like dysphoria and like growing up and not feeling all that comfy with where I was. But I also talk about like my mental health. Like, there's so much more freedom to be more out there with, like, I guess with ideas and with kind of art. There's not really that like expectation that like everything has to have all straight lines and all that stuff. Like, it's all squiggles.
Yeah, nothing's ever a straight line. We're all made up from like different cookie cut. People will be like, "Oh, we're all cookie cutter shapes and people," but no, we all come with our own very personal, very uniquely associated with us cookie cutter modes. Like, some could have like more arms, more legs. Some could just have more appearances. Others have less of an appearance. But all of us come from the same community, have different traits. And even if it wasn't for the same community, we still are all human. And like, basically, you should basically treat everybody with the same respect and decency as someone that's your close friend or someone that you just met. Like, you always should respect them with the same decency and give the same energy back as they deserve and as you deserve. And so we're getting to the near the end of our interview, but we're gonna do this flash 5 questions where we get to know you more, just you, instead of, because we already know about your career history and it was lovely learning about you and knowing your career history, but now we're gonna learn more about you. We're gonna learn about like what are your opinions on some things, what do you see on this. So like, our first question is, what is your opinion about queer representation in today's media?
Oh, it needs to get so much better. There's been so many strides, but like, it needs to be so much better. It needs to be more inclusive. It needs to be more diverse. It needs, it's broken. It's better than it used to be, but it's so broken.
Like I always say that, like, we have a good foot in. That's the important part, but from that foot, we should be able to like grow upon that and make everything that we do better than before, because that's what we had to do. We had to be better than the ones before us, because that's what they want us to do. They want us to have more experiences, more freedom than they had before. And for us to have those freedoms, we're going to want to also have those freedoms for our future generations and have their freedoms better than ours, because having representation matters when you're discovering yourself. Because if you don't see yourself there, don't think it's normal, and that should never be the case. Next question is, do you have any queer influences or role models that you enjoy learning about or following them?
I would say no, but me being a baby queer, I was really intrigued by Stephen Fry and his just like Renaissance man intelligence. Like, it seemed like there was an interview with him on everything, and just like realizing like, oh, like just being like, oh, he is so smart and he knows things about everything, and then realizing, oh, he's gay. Like, that extra layer where I'm like, I could aim to do that. Like, that would be so cool.
Like, you just like, oh my gosh, okay, you're so intelligent. I'm just amazed by it. But then when they're just like, oh, I'm so queer, they get to like, hold up. Hey. So if you can do all of this and you're queer, then there's like a chance that I could do it. And that, like, that goes back to the importance of representation and the importance of like of me creating this channel, because I want like everybody to be like, you're not alone, and that the queer community has like different faces, different experiences, that like you might relate to somebody or relate to like certain things from other people's stories, but to acknowledge that you're not alone, that you still have these like amazing experiences and you get to be lived, because a lot of people rather be like, all right, just keep it to myself, and realize like there's some situations that you can come out, and that because you come out, you feel more liberated and more happy than you did like years before. So our third question is, what is your life anthem? Like that song that defines you, that like no matter how sad you are, you just listen to the song and you're like, you know what, I could do anything. I could change laws within our society and country because of this song. This song pushes me up, pumps me up to like, you're like, you know what, if you mess with me, watch out.
Yeah, I don't really know. It's tough because there's so many bops, you know?
Yeah.
My freshman year of college, I was having a rough semester. And I was just listening on Spotify, and this song called The Village came up by Rabel. And I was like, holy shit, this song is about my life. Holy shit. Like, it like references family members. I'm like, that's my uncle's name. Like, what the hell? And just like, you know, a song from a queer writer about a queer life was like so impactful for me. Like, I got a tattoo of it. Like, you know, my first tattoo was song lyrics. Like, just thinking and feeling like I'm not alone. Other people have struggled with this. Other people have gone through, you know, abusive situations and come out of it, you know, stronger people. So really, really feeling that and like having that reassurance, I guess, it's really important to me.
No, yeah, like especially finding that queer artist that like relates to you, I think that's so cool to like have and follow. Like for example, I discovered, I think about a year ago, this artist named Carlos Vara, and he was, I just remember, I think he's like half like Greece, but also half Salvadorian. And but for me, it was just like, oh my gosh, I'm half Salvadorian. And then he has a song called Confident, and then he just talks about how like, yeah, on the outside he looks confident and secure, but on the inside he's like, what am I doing? Like, where is this confidence coming from? He's like you're going out with someone, and then me, I'm just like here, but I'm still confident. And like that's like so cool to have like those queer songs and queer artists to be like, I connect to you, you connect to me, let me support you, take my money now. Name 5 people you would love to have dinner with. Like it could be past or present, but like 5 people you just want to have dinner with because you just want to ask them questions, or you just want to see them again. Like what would those 5 people be?
That's so tough. Yeah. You know, probably just having a conversation with Stephen Fry would like blow my mind. Malala Yousafzai, like, you know, really, in that time I was like, in that baby queer time, I was like, damn, she's like such a strong woman. Like, just, I would love to just like tell me what you think about all of these issues. You know, because I do theater, good old William Shakespeare. My grandma, you know, she was really a rock for me, and like, you know, being able to sit and talk to her again would be so powerful for me. You know, being like, here's where I am now. Who are you proud of me? I don't know how many people that is. I feel like that's what, 4?
4, yeah, one more.
I can't think of a 5th person. You know, sitting down with like Harvey Milk, or you know, Sylvia Rivera, or Martha P. Johnson. Like, where, like, just sitting down with them and be like, here's where the community is now. What do you think of us? You know, really like being able to sit down, especially because so many queer elders were, you know, were like, I don't know how to put this, like politely, so many of them were taken away from us, you know, with the AIDS crisis and with all kinds of other shit. Like, being able to sit down with somebody who was there in, you know, what we now think of as like the beginnings of the queer revolution or whatever. Like, I think that would be so cool.
I think that's like amazing, just because like you would want to know their opinion. Be like, did you imagine this? Did you like? I know you wanted a better life, but did you ever imagine how our lives would be now because of your actions today? And just having like a grandmother, I think that's beautiful, because I know that a lot of people, when I ask them this question, they always have like that one relative that like they love so much and they passed on too soon, that they rather have like that one conversation again. And like I think that's beautiful that you share that with us, and that like my condolences, but also that you are having such a diverse group of people, because you don't have a lot of people are just like, I want like-minded individuals like me, but you're just like, no, I want to hear their opinion, I want to like pick their brain. And that's like very interesting table that I would love to be like, I wonder what they're talking about. And our last question for this interview, this lovely interview, is that if you could give one piece of advice to someone, it doesn't have to be queer related, just that one piece of advice, what would you say? It could be like a piece of advice that someone told you before, or a piece of advice that like you read somewhere that you're just like, that resonated with me and I'm carrying this for the rest of my life. What would you say that advice would be to our audience?
That's so tough. You know, I feel like, again, like what I would say to my younger self, be strong, you know, be brave. You know, like you can go so far in the world and you can do so much good. Just harness that and like go and seek and try to do good. I guess that's all I think we really need, you know?
Yeah, totally. Like that's like such a beautiful piece of advice that I appreciate you sharing with us and our audience. So sadly, our interview has come to an end today. And I would like thank to you for joining us today and having this wonderful interview. I want to say that you don't have to take the time out of your day to do this, but you did for this interview, and I really appreciate it. And that this is the end of our interview today. So thank you for joining us for Queers Live with Robert Garcia, with our special guest T. And I hope you all have a good day wherever you are. Good night, or watching this between classes or work. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed our video today. Remember to subscribe, give a like. It'll really help me start creating more content, because then it shows my boss that you guys like it. So thank you, and have a great day, night, wherever you are. Take care, everybody.